Hi again, so it is Lisa, Jamisa Stud, and this is part 3, and this is actually paddock 3. So this is what we call the Brigalow paddock, and you may have watched the other episode, the previous episodes, where I talked about the salty spring. So this paddock has quite a diverse array of soil. So again, I'm going to turn it around. Here you can see part of the spring, so it actually goes into the neighbour's paddock and it kind of looks like a bit of a creek. So this here is and forms part of our salty spring. So I'm going to be doing 2 separate soil sample tests in this paddock. One is going to be sort of in the edge of the spring where stuff grows but it's not really viable or that edible. So in here you can see that there is a cover, a white cover, and that is salty, saline, however you want to call it, whatever you want to call it I should say. And all this green stuff, this weed as you would commonly refer to it as, is what I believe is saltbush. So you can see all this green stuff here, that's saltbush obviously. It's enjoying the salty spring. So I just have to look up here. So up here, all along here, you can see the salty spring, and I'll show, I have to do separate videos for this obviously because there's so many different sections of the paddock and you don't need to hear me huffing and puffing up and down the paddock across the hills. But you can see that it travels along there and then it goes this way. So up here, on the higher section of the paddock, we have what used to be grass, and we also have a lot of Nagura burr, or commonly known as football burr. So this section up here is what I'll be testing as a different soil sample, and I'll be testing down here and along the salty spring for different samples. And it's difficult because it's such a diverse type of soil. Like over here is very red soil, and then up here is still red, a kind of loamy, blacky sort of a soil, and it's kind of like that across all the paddocks I suppose. But obviously we've got a lot of saltbush here, and then up there on the other side of the spring creek bed we have Brigalow and Mother of Millions. Anyway, I'll continue on that with a different video. So what I'm digging here now is going to be my soil sample part, or soil sample 2. So the second soil sample of the top area of paddock where I spoke about had lots of Nagura burr, where you can kind of see all the dead stalks, etc. that are still there. Now the interesting thing is you can see grass, there's a bit of creeping blue and stuff here, and there's actually a green tinge to it. Now the funny thing is that there are sections all across the paddocks that have, you know, there might be a small spot, but they have a bit of green tinge to the pick. And as you can see, there's a different view of the salty spring, and you can see all that green is actually nothing but saltbush. And obviously you can see the difference in the colours of the soil in the paddock. So the reason that I wanted to video this was I've dug a section here for the top part of the paddock, just to show the type of the soil. And I'm actually handling this bit because it hasn't been sprayed, but you can see how crumbly it is. You can see the fact that there is grass here. If I was to pull that out, it just breaks off. So there's no soil sticking to it. Obviously it's very dry, very parched, and you can see this soil is also cracking. So obviously we want to address that issue here. Now with this paddock, because of the Nagura burr and the excessive mother of millions and what have you. We did actually, much to my distaste and displeasure, spray this paddock with Regen. Now, I'm not going to try and explain that on here. You can Google it if you want, if you're not sure what Regen is. It's a woody weed herbicide. So basically, from the other side of this power pole that you can see here, we sprayed all of this paddock with Regen. So I'm going to be interested to see what the soil sample brings back as far as that goes. But yeah, so this is just a different type of soil to what we were looking at up in the olive paddock, and it's, as you can see, it's very, very hard, dry. It's depressing, really. But yeah, this is soil sample site 2 for the Brigalow paddock outside the salty spring. Okay, so this is a separate take. We're still in the Brigalow paddock, and the reason that I wanted to do several sections in this video, hopefully there's enough storage on the phone, is because it's such an interesting and diverse type of paddock, as I discussed previously. Now, the last few samples that I've taken were across the hill. Sorry I have to do it this way. It's always easier if you've got 2 people. So you can see we kind of got a bit of a valley here, and a green pick. We've even got a flowering cactus over there. I don't know whether you can see it in the video, but you can see that the valley goes down there, and there is actually a bit of a decent green pick. Now this paddock, it is probably warrants to say that has been shut for possibly 2 months. I'd have to check the diary, but it has been closed off, so there hasn't been anything in this paddock for a couple of months, which is good. Now down here you can see in the spring, this is a continuation of the salt spring from the previous snapshot. There's a lot of reeds. So what I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to be going down there and taking some more samples sort of alongside areas that possibly could have something in them, but at this point, because of the salinity, high salinity content of the soil in that salt spring, nothing really wants to grow there except reeds and saltbush. So that's the point, the plan at this point, I should say. Now, all of this soil, as I said earlier, all of this has been sprayed. So this has been sprayed with a herbicide, Regen, for the Ngura bear, which all those brown things that you can see up there were the Ngura bear. There was a lot across here, but it's kind of broken up and mulched in and what have you. Now, it probably is worth mentioning that that was sprayed possibly 5 or 6 months ago, I would say, at a rough guess, without again checking. But yeah, so you know, you can see the difference in the paddocks really, and you can see that back there was kind of a chocolatey type of red soil, and here is a really bright red, and down further in the salty spring is quite brown as well. So it's quite interesting. But we'll go down here and we'll do a video down there, and I'll take some more soil samples back along the salt spring. Yeah, and we can go from there. Okay, so here's the last section quickly, because the phone is telling me that it's close to being out of storage. So this is the last video of what I'm going to take in the Brigalow paddock, and here we have basically the those dead trees that you can see over here. Zoom in. That is actually our boundary and our then access road out of our place up there, just on the other side of those trees and fence. This here is all obviously the salt spring, and you can see that there it's obviously a high salinity content. But then here, interestingly enough, we have grass in the salt spring, which is basically in the middle of it, because you can see there with all those reeds, they are growing in a lower section of the spring. So you've got this bit of a ridge that runs up the middle of it, and then I'll just point back this way. It is quite soggy in there. I don't know whether you can kind of tell from there, from the video itself, but in there is very soggy. So what I'm going to do, and the reason that I'm taking two separate soil sample sections, is you can look back here and you can see the ridge that I was pointing at in that previous section and how it runs down into here. There's quite a bit of green pickup in there in front of where my finger is, and then up there, all that area that we sprayed with the greys on is up there. So obviously with the couple I should say, showers that we have had, there's the potential for that to have run down into this area. And here you've obviously got the salt bush, but the part that intrigues me is all this, I guess it would be wild cooch, is just here, this section just here. Then you've got the reeds and the things that can survive high salinity areas. So the reason that I'm taking the different soil samples from the different sites is up in that paddock we've sprayed, and it's quite a sort of a loamy, not a desirable loamy soil, but it's possibly croppable up there. And then down here we have the actual salt spring where grass does have the ability to grow. So my way of thinking at this point is that perhaps we can do something to assist all the grass that's in this salt spring to continue to grow. So whether we need to add something that may help reduce the salinity, I've got no idea at this point, clearly. And at the top of the spring up here, so you can see the roof of our house up there, so up over sort of in this general direction we have our dam, and it's our longest lasting dam. It's the dam we pump out of to the stock tank. That dam has no salinity content whatsoever, and this salt spring runs just underneath that. So it is a very curious I guess system we've got running here in this paddock. So yeah, I'm going to take two separate soil samples in this paddock, one for the salt spring, one from the paddock as I've previously mentioned, and I'm just going to see, and obviously I'm going to post the results of our soil tests as we get them done. They're quite expensive, they're around $200 per sample, so possibly won't get them all done at once, but I'll walk over here quickly just to show you. Now we've had absolutely no rain, but you can see that it's quite damp and sludgy. Like that part not particularly, but it is quite sludgy. And then over here we've got the grass, which is looking quite good. So who knows? Your guess is as good as mine at this point. So if you have something similar on your place, or if you've experienced something similar, I would absolutely love to hear from you. I'm intrigued. I'm really interested to see how this little ecosystem down here works, for want of a better word. So yeah, this is our brigalow paddock. Salt spring, crop area, lots of brigalow timber as you can see, hence the name. So yeah, this is our paddock 3, brigalow paddock, part 3 of the series that I'm putting together. Very interesting, for me anyway. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this little paddock. I'm not really sure what else to say. There's not much to say really. We're just going to have to wait till we get the soil samples back and see what they say. So thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you or chat with you real soon. So I'm afraid I'm going to have to add one more part to the brigalow paddock series. Now the thing that I find really curious is that I'm sitting in the high section where all the green I guess wild cooch is at the moment, and as dry as it is, you would find it hard to believe that there's so much greenery, but it is in the middle of the salt spring, so it's obviously getting some sort of benefit from the moisture in the salt spring. But what blows me away, I actually came into the middle of this because I thought this would be a good spot to get a soil sample. And what blows me away is how freaking hard it is. So I'm just going to alter this. Now you can see where I've got the wrecking bar. Now I've had a couple of goes at this, right? I'm not really making much headway. Like, I'm not really wanting to dig in here and destroy too much, but I just can't get over how hard that is. And that's not moist at all. Like it's, you can see here, it's very dry, difficult to crumble. So yeah, I just thought that was really interesting and worth chucking in there, because if you move just over here to this area, which I'll quickly do for the benefit of the video. Let's see where it is. Okay. It's quite easy to dig into, and I can feel, and you can probably see the moisture content of that. So it's not really crumbling that easily. It's very sticky and hard, stuck together, but that's got a lot of moisture in it, and it was easy to dig out. So yeah, that's interesting, because I would have thought that there wouldn't be a great deal of difference between what I was digging over there and what I was trying to dig just here. Stay tuned for the soil sample results.